In today's show, veteran reporter Howard Beck joins the program. We talk about the number 3 pick, Damian Lillard rumors, and Damian Lillard's future. Yes, it's the offseason. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. In today's show, we are joined by veteran NBA reporter Howard Beck, who you can read on GQ and you can see all over the Locked On Podcast Network this time of year. Howard, how you doing?
Doing great, Mike. How are you?
I am doing well. We are, we had planned out this podcast a little bit, sent some emails back and forth, and then Damian Lillard's got on a podcast and talked about changing teams. So we're going to change up our plan a little bit. I want to talk about the number 3 pick. I want to talk about what the Blazers should do armed with this shiny offseason toy to make really big decisions with. But I guess let's start with the rumors, Howard. Let's just feed the beast. It's not what I wanted. On a podcast today, Damian Lillard made an appearance and was asked sort of to address in general the rumors and his situation, et cetera, about what his future might be. And he mentioned that he'd be interested in playing with the Miami Heat. He'd be interested in playing with the Brooklyn Nets as well. How much this time of year, we're recording this in the morning of June 7th, this time of year with this stage in sort of where the Blazers and where Damian Lillard are, how much credence should we give to this type of thing?
Well, if it's just unsourced reporting, anonymous rumors, whatever, like not to dismiss any of that, but those are things you place in one category. All right. Oh, there's rumblings of this potential deal or rumors of the Blazers are open to, or Dame is open to. That is one category of stuff. This is Damian Lillard himself speaking for himself on the record with Brian Custer of Showtime Sports. And so like, this is not one where you just like, oh, this is just chatter. No, this is Damian Lillard himself saying when the question was posed to him by Brian Custer, hey, and he listed 4 teams. Hey, when you hear rumors of Damian Lillard to the Knicks, to the Nets, to the Celtics, to the Heat, those are the 4 teams that Brian Custer mentioned. What do you think? Or which would you pick? And what surprised me is that in most cases, a guy is going to say, because they don't want to feed the frenzy. They're going to say, hey, look, great respect for all those teams. I'm focused on being a Trailblazer. Or, listen, I don't know what the future may be. I'm happy where I am, whatever. And then maybe the interviewer will try to pin you down. All right, but just hypothetical. I'm not saying you're going to go there. You're not committing to anything. But if you had to pick one, he didn't have to nudge him, prod, anything. Dame went straight to Miami, obviously. That was his quote, Miami, obviously. And then he says, I'm reading, I transcribed a little bit. He says, Bam is my dog for real. So he's talking about Bam Adebayo and why Miami was first. There's more to the clip that was on Twitter, which is where I'd first seen it. So I went to YouTube to watch the rest of this. And he follows up by saying, and I'm quoting again, Brooklyn is another obvious one because Mikal Bridges is my dog too. And both have capable rosters. So what he's saying is, and he talked about this earlier in the discussion with Brian Custer, that when you're thinking about getting traded and you're thinking about trying to obviously improve your situation, you don't want to go somewhere where you either have where you have a bad supporting cast or where they have to trade so much to get you that there's nothing left for you to join. Right. And I think what he's saying in both cases is, hey, Miami can make this deal and still have enough around me when I get there. Brooklyn can make this deal. And I agree. I think both of those things are true. So what's newsworthy to me is that Damian Lillard did not just bat this away, and that he pretty enthusiastically named those 2 teams based on obviously everything, but chiefly Bam being in one place, a guy he'd want to play with. I'm sure he wouldn't mind playing with Jimmy either. And Mikal Bridges in Brooklyn. And these teams do have the assets to pull this off. The Nets have all those extra picks they got from Phoenix in the Kevin Durant deal, and one from Dallas that they got in the Kyrie Irving deal. They've got all these other pieces. It's possible. But I would just say this. It's June 7th as we record this. Finals are underway. Draft is still a couple weeks off. I've always believed that if Damian Lillard was going to be traded, it would be because Damian Lillard said it's time. Yep. And that the Trailblazers would not do this on their own. It's June 7th, and we have not heard any inkling that Damian Lillard is leaning toward a trade request, demand, suggestion, anything. And so part of me thinks if this was going to be the year where it happened, we'd kind of have an inkling of it by now. And we don't. But then again, I remember this. June 30th of last year, I believe, was the date that Kevin Durant, 6 weeks after being knocked out of the playoffs or something along those lines, suddenly out of the blue decides he wants to be traded. Like he could have thrown down those gauntlets at any time, and he waited until the eve of free agency. So a lot can happen, and certainly a lot can happen in the next couple of weeks leading into the draft and on draft night itself. And then the last thought on that is just simply that the Trailblazers have to know by then. They need a direction by then, and we'll get into that obviously. But you got to know going into draft night whether you want to use that pick for yourself or whether you're picking for somebody else. They need clarity soon.
Yeah, I would say to your point, when Dame speaks, trust him. Last year, this wasn't on The Last Stand. I'll link the YouTube video and the show, The Last Stand on Showtime. I'll link it in the episode description for this episode that Howard is referencing with Brian Custer, the interview that Dame did. But last year, Dame did a similar, it was like heading into the season. He did a similar kind of like video thing on, I'm forgetting the show off the top of my head now, but they said, who would you like to play with? Are there any guys you want to play with in the league? And instead of saying like, oh, you'd love to play with the stars, like Giannis Antetokounmpo, or like, pipe dreams that are things that are unrealistic, he said Jared Vanderbilt and OG Anunoby.
Interesting. He's got his guys. He knows who he likes.
People like that the Blazers absolutely pursued down the line, right? Like he was telling that was as true as it could be. He said, who do you want to play with? And he picked like, multi-positional defender role players. Oh, guys, I'd love to play with are like, gettable players on other teams. So when he says where can you see yourself? And he mentions Brooklyn and Miami, it's real. Like he, at least not to the point where it's like, this is a trade demand, but the point is where Damian Lillard has considered the possibility that things change. And he has two destinations in mind. If things change, I think it's been clear. And you were on last time you were on the show, a friend of the program, Howard Beck. Last time you were on the show was prior to the draft lottery. So we didn't know the Blazers had the number 3 pick, which is what we're going to talk about here in a second. But at the time, it was like, it seemed pretty clear from Dame's comments at X interviews that he wants them to pursue veteran talent or perhaps make the tough decision to end the era. And like you said, he's not going to get traded unless he says it's time. But there is a big decision to be made with 3, because if they feel like they can't pass up a young player at 3, it might signal the end of this era, just because of Dame's preferences, not because of animosity or any of those things, but because he's been super clear and he doesn't want to get Carmelo Anthony. He doesn't want to get traded to the Knicks and have all the other good players go the other direction. He knows what the deal is. So I didn't want to do this. Like I'll straight up, I'll tell my listeners, I didn't want to start the show talking about Dame trade stuff. It's like, it's not my cup of tea personally, but I think there is some teeth to this in that it is a real honest response from Damian Lillard. The question is, what the heck are they going to do at 3, Howard?
Yeah. And this is why I say they need clarity. So far be it for me to tell Joe Cronin or anybody else there how to operate, but I think this is common sense. If you haven't already had the conversation, you need the heart-to-heart with Dame between now and the draft. Like, where are you? Where are you really? And maybe even in the wake of these comments to Brian Custer, do you feel you have enough clarity as an organization, or do you need to really pin this down right now? And if there's any ambiguity, this is the time to do it, right? Dame, where do you want to be? Do you still want to be here? Should we go all in? Do you really want us to trade the 3rd overall pick? A guy who, whoever we may get there, we'll talk about those options. But like, this is somebody who could help you and also bridge to the next generation once you've retired. But that guy might not be ready to win right away. And
they're 20 years old, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it might be a guy who might be a little duplicative of position and skill set and whatever. So we need clarity. Because I think there's multiple options, but there's 2 pretty clear ones, right? The 2 most obvious directions are keep the pick, use it, trade Dame, rebuild, go young, and now rebuild around, maybe it's Scoot Henderson. The other option, of course, is trade the pick, get the veteran help that Dame needs, figure out what to do. Can you trade Nurkic? Are you re-signing Jeremy Grant? Figure out all the other stuff with the veterans and go all in and say, you know what? You've been loyal. We've been loyal. We want to, let's finish this out. Let's go all in, screw the future. Let's just figure out how to be the best team we can be around Damian Lillard for the next, whatever it is, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever he's got left. And, those decisions are difficult, right? We've seen the Warriors on a different level struggle with this, right? Different in that, obviously, they didn't have to worry about just trying to get back to the playoffs, although, frankly, they did have a couple of years out there, but there were circumstances surrounding that. But the Warriors always had their core. But because they had the injuries, suddenly they've got lottery picks. They make the Wiggins deal. That got them that other lottery pick from Minnesota. So suddenly you're bringing Kuminga and Moody. And, of course, the really bad year they get Weissman. I believed the whole time. I've been consistent on this. I believed the whole time, forget the picks, forget the future, trade, even before it became Weissman, even before the picks became Moody and Kuminga, I thought they should have traded them for veteran help because that's what you do when you have a core of a championship team that has life left in it. Worry about the future when you get there. And I have felt the same thing here. I thought maybe we even discussed this the last time I was on. I thought they should have traded the pick that became Shaedon Sharpe.
Right.
And he's turned out to be pretty good. And I know the impression I get is that they absolutely want to hold on to him, even if they do start to even if they're going all in on keeping Dame and trying to win now, they still think that Shaedon is ready to do that right now and help them win right now. But I do think that 3rd pick is an incredibly valuable piece for them. And the one option I don't endorse personally is that middle option where you're like, we're not trading Dame or the pick. We're going to make the pick and we're just going to try to figure it out. I don't know that is a viable path. I think you've stuck yourself in the middle there. You're trying to straddle 2 realities, and I don't think it's going to work out. And again, back to the Warriors, they ended up finally trading Weissman to get, Gary Payton II. We don't need to go down that path on this podcast. But there was a reckoning there where it was like, you know what? It's going to take too long. Weissman may become a great player, but it can't be here. We have the present to worry about. And given Lillard's age, to me, it's the same kind of calculus.
It's a little different because the Blazers have the core of a 7th place team, right? They
Yes.
don't have a championship core. It is. So it makes even the road that they're trying to navigate even harder. Let's talk about Scoot Henderson. Let's talk about Brandon Miller. Let's talk about fit and future and all that in the second segment. Before we do that, I want to tell my listeners that right now the Timbers play on Sunday here in Portland against FC Dallas, and you can get in the stadium and sit upstairs in that beautiful East Club level for under $60. Right now, there is a flash deal on the Gametime app, $48 to sit upstairs in that eastern side. You're looking at the sunset as the game kicks off, on Sunday afternoon. If you want to spend a little more money, you could spend $56 and get a couple rows lower. You can get in the stadium for under $30. All of that available on the Gametime app. It's what they do. It's what they do. They get you deals on what you want to see. So whether it's sports or concerts or live comedy or live theater, whatever you're looking for, you're going to find it. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps and you're set. And plus they're sent directly to your phone. Bing, bang, boom. You got your tickets and you're going to see what you want to see. So download the Gametime app and create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. You can snag those tickets without the stress with using Gametime. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use the redemption code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Still chatting here with Howard Beck. Who do you like between Scoot Henderson and Brandon Miller? There's probably no wrong answer, but let's talk just in a vacuum first. What do you make of these two? Because that's the Blazers. Basically, that's who they're going to be choosing between. I have my listeners, for those of you who listen every day, you didn't listen the last couple of days because I was on vacation. Scoot Henderson worked out for the Blazers on Saturday while I was gone. That's what happens when you leave town, is some stuff generally pops up in your world. Brandon Miller, I assume, will work out for them in the next couple of weeks. We're about 2 weeks out from the draft. The choice is going to come down to Scoot or Brandon Miller. Who do you like, and why do you like him, Howard?
I think the lesson here, Mike, is that you should not take time off. You just don't leave town. Things happen.
I know. I got a young child. I want to take her visit her grandparents. And as soon as you do that, you pay the price.
No. Family's got to take a back seat. It's June. You can't do that. I do not mean that by any stretch. So two things on the Scoot versus Brandon Miller discussion. One, I'm not a draft expert, so I'm always going to wade cautiously on player A versus player B stuff in the draft. Two, it's probably not their choice unless they were looking to move up, right? Like Charlotte's going to make this decision. Yeah, Charlotte's going to make this decision for them most likely. And who knows, Charlotte could trade out of that spot too. And so maybe it is, mystery team to be named later,
right,
that is making that call. Somebody may be jumping up to 2 to take Scoot or Brandon Miller. There's differing impressions out there, but I do think there is a sense that maybe the Hornets are leaning in the direction of Miller. Maybe because of positional fit and concerns about Scoot and LaMelo. I know Scoot has said very emphatically we could play together. He may be right. It's always kind of hard to tell until you actually get guys together, but they've both got size. And so it wouldn't be a worry of having like the really undersized backcourt, which we've seen that be problematic for teams at times, including the Blazers.
Yeah.
Can't imagine. So there's that. We don't someone's going to fall to them, or the decisions will be made for them. And when if they haven't traded the pick, then on draft night it's going to come to them, and either Scoot is going to be there or Brandon Miller is going to be there. And maybe they'll have a better sense by then of where the teams ahead of them are leaning. I mean, we know Wembanyama's number one, but maybe we'll have a better sense by then of whether or not Charlotte has a leaning, or whether Charlotte's dealing the pick to somebody else who has a specific player in mind there. Let's go the rebuild scenario for a minute. If I'm rebuilding, I want Scoot.
Same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To me, in today's NBA, or maybe the NBA of any era, I want to start with a guy who is not just an outstanding scorer, which I think Scoot is going to be at this level, but scorer and playmaker. I want somebody I can build around. And when I say build around, could you build around various positions of various skill sets? Sure. But, the Nuggets are what they are right now in the finals because Jokic, unusually for his position, is this consummate, incredible playmaker who makes everybody else around him better. The Heat are there because Jimmy Butler, despite not being a point guard, we've never even really called him a point forward, though we probably should. He has been the primary hub of the Heat's offense for a lot of the time. They run a lot of stuff through Bam also, and they do have nominal point guards, but having your superstar be a guy who can score at a high level when needed, who can score in a variety of ways, obviously, who's got some leadership capabilities, but also who is selfless and wants everybody else around him to succeed. That's Jokic. That's Butler. That's the NBA Finals right now. I'm biased in this case because a couple years back, I went and spent a bunch of time with Scoot Henderson and his family down in Marietta, Georgia, for a feature story that I did for Sports Illustrated. So I know Scoot and his family and his path in a way that I don't Brandon Miller. So what I know of them and know of Scoot, I like everything to me is like all incredibly positive signs.
Right.
And it's a lot of the intangibles you want to check off, right? Like the thing we don't know about rookies on day one, and it's why teams still screw up the draft, is you see a talent outline, you do your best to try to figure out how the guy is built mentally and their character, and you put them through the psychological test and all this, and yet you still end up with teams, and interestingly, or teams picking guys who fall into this category that DeMar DeRozan pointed out recently on a podcast where he said 50% of the players in the NBA don't love basketball. And Pat Beverly said that recently on a different podcast, I think on his own. I'm not worried about that with Scoot Henderson.
Right.
Kid loves, eats, sleeps, breathes basketball. He's got an incredible family around him. He's a high character guy. He's kind of low key as a personality, but you can see the leadership qualities there as well. And I met him. He was still like 17 and had just finished what was his junior year of high school and was now skipping his senior year of high school to go straight to the Ignite. Not skipping. He graduated early. That's also how dedicated he is. He like doubled up his classes. He did all this stuff. And even then, I saw him in the gym, shirt off, and went, holy crap, he looks like an NBA player right now. In fact, he's in better shape than a lot of NBA players. Dude was just built. And he's had a couple of years now of working in the G League with the Ignite, playing for them and working on his body and getting that much more NBA ready. I know he's worked really hard on his outside jumper as well, which has been, something that scouts have flagged as maybe a concern. Any of the concerns teams would have about, is a guy going to work? Does he care? Does he committed? All this stuff. Those are things like, from my experience in the limited time I had around Scoot and his family, not worried in the least. So I don't know any of those things about Brandon Miller, having not spent the time. So there's, like I say, there's it's not a bias based on anything other than, my reporting experience. But I would definitely want to build around Scoot. And, look, Brandon Miller might become an incredible NBA player. And we've certainly seen players at that position too. Many notable ones become the hubs of their teams as scorers and playmakers. I just don't know enough about him.
Yeah, I think I lean Scoot as well. I am also a total draft novice. Like, I start paying attention in May. So it's like, oh yeah,
We've got plenty of NBA stuff to watch.
I'm going to figure it out. Like, May 15th or whatever, when the Blazers get eliminated, I'm going to become a draft expert. So you mentioned this, and I want to get back to it. It seems like the Blazers have to pick a path, but the signals right now they are sending is that they'll go right down the middle, Howard. They don't give a hoot. They are the sort of what is coming out from many sort of the news breakers and what I prefer to call them news brokers in the league. It is that the Blazers are comfortable with keeping 3 if they don't get blown away by a trade offer out there. And that is public posturing, right? That is saying, like, stop calling us with your weak stuff. Like, 3 is a really good pick. Call us when the deal is for real. But if they call your bluff and you end up on the clock with no Dame trade and 3, why don't you like that for specifically the Blazers and maybe NBA teams at large? Why is the middle route that the Blazers are signaling a problem for you? Or
it wouldn't be it wouldn't be if Dame were 5 years younger.
Right.
But he's at a stage of his career where, and by the way, like statistically and by some of the advanced stats, he had not just his greatest season, but one of the best seasons in recorded history.
Yeah, he was arguably the best offensive player in the NBA last year. Like, he was better than Luka Doncic and better, like, by some numbers, better than Nikola Jokic, who probably should have won a third MVP. Like, he was great.
So if you look at that and you say, you know what, he's not slowing down. He's got some miles left, significant miles left. And we should, let's keep Dame in a Trailblazers uniform until the day he retires, as he's always talked about, as we've always wanted. Greatest player in franchise history. We're not ready to do this. And he's certainly shown he's still capable of leading a team deep in the playoffs if he's got the right supporting cast. Okay, great, cool. He will be 33 in July, and history suggests, physics suggests that there's still a horizon coming, right? I don't know if it's 2 years, 3 years, whatever, but it's probably more closer to 3 than 5, right? Like, when you're 36,
for the first time, it's clearly finite. When you're 26, it's not like this. When you're 32, even if you're excellent, it's finite. You have X number of years remaining.
And so, that being the case, you have to ask yourself, how realistic is it that we can rebuild around him and compete at a high level and have a plausible case to make to be a contender while he is still playing at this level, which may only be 2 or 3 more years. So, all right. So then you start looking at all the levers you can pull, and you look at who you've got, and you go, well, are we going to get there with Dame, Simons, Nurkic, this whole, no, that roster, not good enough. All right. How many of these pieces do we have to change out? How quickly can we change them out? How good are the upgrades that we're going to be able to make? What is Anthony Simons worth if we trade him? What's the team willing to give us? Is Jeremy Grant worth, the contract that he may be asking for? Will somebody take Nurkic off our hands? And if they do, can we get back enough value that we can parlay it into a true rim protector? Like there's just so many different things they need to do to make this team viable that just saying we're going to use the 3rd pick and keep Dame suggests to me that you're still straddling this awkward middle. And yeah, listen, I'm not sure if Scoot and Dame make sense or not. The Blazers have had various versions of Scoot or of Dame and CJ, Dame and Anthony Simons. Like, they keep going with this.
Do it again. Run it back. Dame and Scoot. Let's do it.
Over-indexed on, and listen, Scoot is a different player than both of those guys, and has a much higher upside than both those guys, and is just bigger and stronger. And there's it would be different. I don't want to say that it's the same thing, but it's the same thing in the abstract, in that you are over-indexed on guards who are the entire offense. And I don't think there's any recent history in the NBA to suggest that that's a path to the championship. That's not the way the Heat are built. It's not the way the Nuggets are built. It's not the way the Warriors were built. It's not the way anybody's built. And you just, to the extent that it's a payroll investment issue, although it's not when you have a rookie on a rookie deal, but you need to have the talent and the payroll and everything else kind of spread across the rotation and the starting lineup. I just don't know that over-indexing on guards is the right path. Now, maybe Brandon Miller ends up being the guy, and Scoot gets taken by Charlotte.
Right.
And now you're talking, okay, well, do Brandon Miller and Shaedon Sharpe make sense together? I just think there's so many different things that need to be done, so many holes to fill in the roster to get to contender status, that I just don't know if you can get there with that middle path. You can get there by trading the pick. You can get there by trading the pick and or Anthony Simons and or maybe even Shaedon Sharpe. I know that that's heresy at this stage, but you have all these different levers to pull if you want to go all in on a veteran cast around Dame right now. You have levers to pull if you want to go all in on a rebuild by trading Dame and using the 3rd pick. The only one that is complicated, and maybe too complicated to even try to pull off, is that middle path where you use the pick, keep Dame, and try to just kind of push forward. It might work, but I feel like that's got the lowest percentage of success.
Do you think they're lying? Like, do you think this is just public posturing? Do you think the Blazers are going to pick a path, or do you buy that if whoever, Brooklyn, Toronto, whoever it might be, doesn't pony up, that they say, you know what? Sorry, we got to do it. Do you buy that the middle path is viable, or not viable? Because clearly you don't think it's viable, but do you buy that they would try to go down that road?
Given their recent history, I can't rule out that they might just stick themselves in the middle again. This is where they've been for years. And then granted, there's been some changeover. Now, Cronin was there with Neil O'Shea, but Neil O'Shea refused to break up that backcourt for years when the entire rest of the league thought their best way forward was to cash out on CJ and try to rearrange the roster around Dame in a way that made more sense, and that again wasn't over-indexed on undersized guards. So they've been doing that. You'd think by now the franchise from top to bottom would have learned from that experience, and I think they probably have. Yeah, my guess is that they're bluffing. Or not bluffing. Same. My guess is that it is posturing, that you need to send every signal possible that you're not interested in dealing that pick unless you're getting the best possible payout, whatever that may be. And look, it was suggested to me yesterday by somebody else in the league, and this is not a trade rumor. Don't aggregate it, folks. It was just a discussing stuff with another team exec, and we were talking about, like, he threw out the possibility of, and I can't remember how many different pieces were in this, but it was the basic outline of it, of course, was the number 3 pick, assuming that it's Scoot, and maybe even Simons to the Nets for Bridges, and whatever other stuff that is being thrown in on either side of this thing, right? And like you could see the start of something there, right? The outline of something. A team with Damian Lillard, Mikal Bridges, especially with the offensive, diversification that we saw in his game last season, especially after he arrived in Brooklyn. Dame plus Mikal Bridges plus, maybe bringing back Jeremy Grant plus whatever else they can do, trading Nurkic. You get the outline of something promising there. And it makes sense. And it would make sense from the Nets standpoint because Bridges is 26, 27. Like you're not, I don't think the Nets are rebuilding around Mikal Bridges. As good as he looked, he's not going to be like the franchise star. He's probably a 1A to somebody else or a 1B to somebody else. So he'd be great next to Dame. But it makes sense for the Nets to then be able to pick up a guy like Scoot Henderson and maybe Simons as well, and have the start of a young core to build with, in addition to all the picks that they have to use. So like something like that makes a lot of sense. But the Blazers may be saying we're going to need more. Maybe they start asking for some of those Suns picks, and maybe the Nets don't want to do that. Maybe those discussions have already happened for all we know. And that's where this is. And maybe, like the Heat are in no position to make those, to be discussing that right now in the middle of the finals. But there's a lot of time left between now and the draft for those discussions to happen. If I had to guess, my guess would be they're keeping Damian Lillard and they're trading the pick. That to me seems like the most logical thing and the most logical read of the tea leaves to date, which is that there are no tea leaves to read on a Dame trade.
That's you anticipated my final question, so we'll get you out of there on that. I think the real thing to know here is that there's going to be 5 minutes when the Blazers are on the clock and Charlotte or Indiana or whoever's taken 2 after this second pick happens, that will probably decide the Blazers' direction over the next half decade. They can't really do anything till they know who's there at 3, because even all of the discussions they have probably hinge on it. If Scoot's there, yes. If Brandon Miller's there, no. Or if Brandon Miller's there, yes. Scoot there, no. Like whatever team that they're dealing with. Or on the Blazers' end, they say, it's not there for us. Scoot's sitting right there. This is the direction. They're going to have 5 minutes on draft night, June 22nd, that are going to be fascinating in terms of making their decision. And we'll see. We'll see.
Just to complicate things further, how about this scenario? Scoot is the key to making whatever deal they're going to make to fortify around Dame, but they're not sure Scoot's going to be there, and Charlotte plays coy. Now it is a trade where they have to move up to 2 to ensure getting Scoot. And do you have the assets to do that, or is that asset coming from the other team that you're making a deal with, who is helping you move up to get to 2 so that you can then draft Scoot to send to that team? I don't know. There's a lot, but there are a lot of possibilities. And by the way, it's not even just that. Like, I think as you look down the lottery order, do the Pistons really want to stay at 5 when they've already got a bunch of young guys? Do they want to trade? Do they want to pull back? Would somebody want to move up to get that pick and then use that pick to get up further to get to 2 or 3? Like, there are other teams that could be angling to get to 2 or 3.
Yeah, would Houston leapfrog up to 2 and try to and go that route because they actually don't want James Harden and they want to go super young?
Well, I think more likely, I think Houston's another one at 4 where they might want to move back.
Right.
So there are teams that I think might want to move back or out because they've already got their young guys and they need to start, getting veterans around them. I just think there's going to be, and look, not all these teams that I'm mentioning are ones that necessarily would jump up to try to get Scoot Henderson or Brandon Miller, but like, there's just a lot of volatility, I think, in the top of the draft because there's so many of these teams that they've already got their youth, right? Like, do they need yet another 19-year-old, or are they ready to make an all-in move to try to get veterans? Or conversely, maybe they've got a bunch of young guys and none of them are the guy, and they want to jump up to get Scoot. In which case, they're packaging. Could the Rockets be packaging the number 4 pick and one of their young guys to get up to 2? Like, I don't know. I think all of those things are possible right now. And you could say that about every draft, but I think especially this draft.
Exactly. Which means that the Blazers' position is both advantageous and incredibly precarious because there are a bunch of people who might be hunting to leapfrog them. And some of it is out of their control, or like you said, they got to throw stuff in the pot to make sure it is in their control. Going to be a fascinating couple of weeks. Howard, thanks so much for joining the show.
Always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Dear listeners, come back for more this week. Rafael Barlow of NBA Big Board is going to be on the show on Friday. We got a couple other shows. I'm back from vacation. Kids seen her grandparents. She doesn't need to see them for a few months, so we'll be here making podcasts. Tell your friends about the show. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.